Alright lads, welcome back to another video. Now, you will notice it's a different setup. Basically, the second bedroom was where I filmed with my green screen, but we've decided to revamp that room, so the green screen can now no longer be utilised. So therefore, we've done the room up with a wee telly in here, so I'm going to try and utilise this in different ways, and as you can see on the screen right now and by the title, thumbnail, etc, etc, it's Scottish Premiership predictions today. Finally! Getting that on the channel. It's a week before the Premiership kicks off, so there's very little time to get this video out. It had to go out this weekend, if not midweek, but even that was a bit of a rush, so deciding to get it out today, a week in advance. So really looking forward to the football finally coming back, even though fans aren't going to be there obviously, but the important thing is that football is back and we can finally talk about some actual tangible football on show. Just on the wee kind of change of setup, you can see obviously there's a wee kind of light shining for the back of the telly here. I can change that to red if I fancy it. Just give me a second. I mean, you can't really see that. Green, I mean, you can have a bit of that as well. You can have a bit of white. But I think we'll go for the blue. You can kind of see that there. But without further ado, let's get into the Scottish Premiership predictions. So here's my league table. It will be filled up as this video goes on, so there's no better place to start than in last place. And unfortunately, again this season, that one goes to Hamilton. Basically everybody always has Hamilton in the bottom two, and probably the vast majority having them rock bottom. Now, I know there's a few Hamilton fans that will be watching this, and I do apologise. Like, I know it won't be great to see your club sitting at the bottom of the table once again in another prediction video. You'll be getting sick of the sight of it, considering that this is now, what, your 6th successive season in the Premiership? You should surely be looking at fans like me and thinking, you clueless, because we always prove you wrong. Well, hopefully you can go and prove me wrong once again. That's the kind of thing that Hamilton have been living off of in the last 5 to 6 years, that they can continuously prove people wrong that doubt them. Their squad overall, in my opinion, they've lost decent players, obviously. Alex Gogic, George Oakley, who I rated as well. Mikael Miller moved on, and they've brought in players like Callum Smith so far. Ross Callaghan, who I actually do think is a good signing. And on top of that, there will be other signings that come in the door, but ultimately, I just don't think Hamilton will have enough. It's the same thing that comes around every year. Hamilton in the bottom two at least. Will they go to prove me wrong once again? We'll wait and see. And then in 11th place, as you can see, Ross County. Now, it's another one of those where it's like, are they good enough to stay out of that bottom two? They were obviously last season, and it was by a smaller margin than they probably would have liked to. They're one of those teams that's always kind of in that in-between section of, do they have enough to stay up, or are they going to be lingering around that bottom two? And in my opinion, they'll end up in the playoffs. As you can see there, the relegation playoffs, just obviously missing out on that vital kind of survival, automatic survival places. 10th place, just surviving, is St Johnstone. Now, this is nothing really against their new management, I suppose, but obviously has been a wee kind of factor in what I've been thinking about. It's not too much that I don't trust Callum Davidson, that he's a good coach and a good manager, because I do actually think he's a fantastic coach. But I don't know, St Johnstone lost Drew Wright to Hibs, for example, and they've still got someone like Stevie May up front. They've got good young players like Ali McCann and Callum Hendry. Now, if they go on to prove their worth like they did, I think, in the second half of the season, mainly for St Johnstone, they'll definitely go and stay up like I already have them doing, but perhaps perform even better than that. I don't know about St Johnstone, to be honest. They're one of the ones that I've kept surviving in the Premiership for another season, but they're obviously teetering on the edge of that survival bit, so it's one of those ones that it's just a wee bit on the edge for me. And then we have St Mirren, the black and white team. I've put St Mirren in 9th place, mainly just based on that's kind of where they always end up finishing in the Premiership. I can't really remember the last time St Mirren were in the Premiership and finished in that top 6 area, so they're kind of just teetering in the middle of the bottom 6 in my predictions, as you can see here. Obviously, their chairman or CEO, whatever he is, Tony Fitzpatrick, has come out and once again claimed that St Mirren will be a top 6 club or even pushing for top 4. And you're allowed to have ambition in football, there's no harm in that, but I don't know, I just see St Mirren finishing in the same positions that they always end up finishing in, and that's usually around those kind of 9th, 8th sort of area. And then the one you've all been waiting for, Dundee United. Or the majority of you anyway. Of course there's a lot of Dundee United fans on this channel based on the content that was made last year when you were in the Championship, and you've now obviously come up into the Premiership and you'll be hoping that your team can survive, and as you can see in my predictions here, I do have you surviving, and finishing in 8th place will have you finishing relatively comfortably in the Premiership for another year, and then obviously you'll be looking to push into this kind of top 6 area here, but I won't have you going there just yet. I still think there's a lot to work on. Obviously the kind of upheaval in management will have made a difference as well. Mickey Mellon coming in after Robbie Nielsen's departure, so I think there is still enough in that core squad to go and sustain a Premiership place for seasons to come, but there will be a wee bit of upheaval initially, players getting to know how the manager wants them to play, etc, etc. And then we have Livingston. I think mainly last season's surprise package in the Premiership, let's be honest. I mean, they finished near enough in European places, and I don't think many people would have had them down to do that at the start of the season, especially with teams like a Hearts in the league, etc, and Hibs obviously coming around that area. It's a new face in that top 6 area. Clearly, I don't have them finishing in the top 6 this time round, and I just think that's going to come down to the fact that I think Lyndon Dykes will move on, and not that he's the most vital cog to Livingston, because they have brought in decent players to play around him, etc, and they've got a decent nucleus of a squad anyway, but they've also lost the likes of Ricky Lamie, and as I said, I think Lyndon Dykes will move on eventually, so I just think Livingston will still perform well throughout the season, as you've seen, obviously finishing above some decent enough teams around them. So I'm just going to quickly go through 6th, 5th, 4th and 3rd, because then we'll get on to the big boys, and these ones are kind of the main ones that you want to talk about otherwise from them. So in 6th place I've got Kilmarnock. I just think that they've got enough in their squad to push for that top 6 place. They were very kind of around that area for the majority of last season, and I think they will make that push into the top 6 this time round. Then you've got Aberdeen. I think they will fall off this season. I don't really know my exact reasons as to that. Maybe it's down to the fact that Derek McInnes has been there for a long period of time, and maybe his ideas will become a bit stale. I have them obviously finishing outside of European places, which their fans won't have been happy with if they do end up finishing in this place, but I just don't think they've got as much as other teams do now, especially with all the wage cuts they've had to take and the lack of players coming in the door at Pittodrie. Then in 4th place you've got Hibernian, obviously making a couple of jumps up from their place last season. I think they ended up finishing 7th based on the points per game ratio, and ultimately I think their signings this summer are going to push them into that 4th place spot and getting them a European place come the end of the season. With players like Kevin Nisbet, Alex Gogic and Dre Wright coming in on top of others that I'm assuming are going to come in the near future as well, I just think Hibs are going to have enough to push into one of those European places and get themselves back up into those kind of upper echelons of the Scottish Premiership. And then as you can see, the one highlighted here, Motherwell, I think they're going to continue to be the 3rd best team in the country. I don't see any reason why not. They managed to keep Stephen Robinson, who was a vital cog to them, of course. They've kept the nucleus of their squad, if not all of it, pretty much. David Turnbull's the only one that's kind of out with that scenario just now, having been linked to Celtic once again, but they were without him for the majority of the season last season, and they performed extremely well for the large majority of it, obviously, because he only came back in the latter stages. So I still think Motherwell will be the 3rd best team in the country come the end of the season next season. So now into the final 2 positions. Have I had the balls to say that Rangers will stop 10 in a row? No. I've got Rangers finishing 2nd and Celtic finishing 1st. I just can't see a reason why I wouldn't pick Celtic going 1st. I know these predictions can usually be a bit, I'll make a kind of sneaky prediction here and get folk riled up, but realistically I just don't see Celtic not picking up 10 in a row here. They've still got very much all of their squad that have been performing year after year, and Rangers are making some okay signings on the face of it, but I just don't see Celtic being picked to 1st place by any other team. Rangers perhaps pushing them a wee bit closer than last season, but ultimately Celtic lifting that trophy, which will be delightful for them and not so for the other side of Glasgow, and pretty much every other team in the country, I suppose. But that's it for this video, guys. Cheers for watching. If you did enjoy it, please give it a like. Comment down below your thoughts on this whole new setup that I've got going on. Is it a wee bit better, a wee bit more professional, better studio with a wee remote, etc, etc? Let me know. And also, obviously, the predictions and what you think of them, and leave your Scottish Premiership 2020-2021 predictions down below in the comments. Subscribe for more of this type of content, and until the next video, I'll see you then. Cheers, guys.